Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Liat could be back fully viable soon with a private sector partner from Nigeria. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Wednesday, 17th May 2023. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies Compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Nigerian airline Air Peace is expected to take a 70% stake in Liat 2020 Limited, with the carrier to be run strictly on a commercial basis. That revelation comes from Prime Minister Gaston Brown, who also says efforts are underway to establish the Air Operating Certificate, or the AOC, for Liat 2020. ABS's Garfield Burford reports.
The government of Antigua and Barbuda saved the carrier from the brink of liquidation by placing it under administration. Since then, a court-appointed administrator, Cleveland Seaforth, has been piloting the operation. The focus now is on Liat 2020 and ensuring it can meet the region's transportation needs. That's where a prospective partnership with Nigeria's Air Peace comes in.
So what we're moving now is to establish the AOC,
right,
the Operating Certificate for Liat 2020, and to have this partnership with Air Peace, in which Air Peace will emerge as a 70% shareholder in the new Liat.
The carrier is now operating with 2 aircraft and with a smaller footprint of routes, but that is set to change once the new arrangement is concretized.
They will bring some assets, and we will also acquire some assets as well, and hopefully we could have maybe 5-6 aircraft operating within the region under the name Liat. We think that Liat is a strong brand. It's a regional brand which we believe should be maintained, and I'm hoping that we can make this a reality so that we can protect the existing jobs and even to create new jobs for those employees who are displaced, especially the pilots.
The Prime Minister said the primary intention was to have had a Liat owned by the regional governments, given how crucial regional transportation is. However, with that not having materialized, the Prime Minister says this is now the best route.
I know that there are many who would want to second-guess that decision. But again, I don't know there's any other viable option at this point. I mean, I would accept that regional governments would have indicated a willingness to invest in a regional airline, but in terms of having firm commitments, we're not at that stage, and we need to move. I mean, regional travel is a major issue.
The head of government explained how Liat's approach is likely to change under a private majority shareholder.
This airline will be run or operated strictly on a commercial basis. So it would not be a regional bus that will be operating on unprofitable routes. And if indeed it has to operate on profitable routes, then there has to be some MRG, some
minimum revenue guarantees.
So, we're looking forward to, the eventual operationalization of this new Liat 2020, and we're committed to do all we can to ensure its viability and sustainability.
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister met with senior U.S. government officials in Washington, D.C. According to his office, they held extensive discussions which surrounded progressing Trinidad and Tobago's energy security and the potential effects of same on CARICOM and the wider Americas. Just last week, a senior U.S. official spoke with TV6's political editor Joel Brown in an exclusive interview about similar matters.
On Monday, the Office of the Prime Minister announced that Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley met with the U.S. Special Presidential Advisor for the Americas, former Senator Chris Dodd, at the White House Eisenhower Executive Office Building in Washington, D.C. The OPM said Energy Minister Stuart Young, who is also Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, attended the meeting. The OPM said that the U.S. State Department's Senior Advisor for Energy Security, the Special Assistant to the President and NSC Senior Director for the Western Hemisphere, and a representative from the Office of the U.S. Vice President were also present. The OPM said the talks featured extensive discussions which surrounded progressing Trinidad and Tobago's energy security and the potential effects of same on CARICOM and the wider Americas, and that the parties agreed to continue working together to secure energy stability for the region. This appeared to be in keeping with the talks U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources Jeffrey Pyatt held with Energy Minister Stuart Young during the U.S. top officials' two-day visit to Trinidad and Tobago last week. Mr. Pyatt spoke about those talks during an exclusive interview with TV6 News on the second day of his visit.
I was very impressed by my conversations with the energy minister, with people in industry, about what TNT is doing on the decarbonization of its fossil fuel industry. It's the same thing that we're going through in the United States, looking at how to minimize CO2 emissions, looking at how to minimize venting and flaring, how to control for methane. That's a critically important aspect of the pathway forward as we work through the energy transition, but we'll still rely on gas as an important transition fuel.
Right after his visit to Trinidad and Tobago, Assistant Secretary of State Pyatt flew to Guyana, which is experiencing an oil and gas boom. Lately, the government has been pointing out that Trinidad and Tobago is a maturing oil and gas province. How do you put that in the context, as you said, our important role in terms of our relationship with the United States where energy issues are concerned? Should Trinidad and Tobago be concerned that the U.S. may be looking at Guyana now more than Trinidad and Tobago?
Not at all. To the contrary. And I started my trip here precisely because of the leadership role that your country plays in the region, in CARICOM, and especially in the regional energy discussion. As you point out, Trinidad and Tobago has a 100-year history with oil and gas. Guyana is new to this is new to this industry.
According to the U.S. State Department, Assistant Secretary Pyatt was scheduled to have met with Guyanese government officials, business leaders, and American companies to discuss bilateral cooperation on a full range of energy issues.
Our interests there are the same as I described here or as in the United States. We want to help Guyana to develop its fossil fuel resources in a way that has the lowest possible CO2 environmental impact, climate impact, and in a way that delivers value for the society. And
Assistant Secretary of State Pyatt said this must also help the society in Guyana to develop and modernize.
This is another area where I was really impressed by my conversation with your energy minister and his characterization of his discussions as a good neighbor with colleagues and counterparts in Guyana and the opportunities there. And I think this is another illustration of how TNT is in a really privileged position to help address the question of economic development and energy security in the wider region.
Jewel Brown, TV6 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Digital transformation leaders across the Caribbean are attending a two-day conference in Trinidad and Tobago, where some tough resolutions are expected to be made. Here is this TV6 story.
Caribbean leaders meet for 2 days at the Hyatt Regency Trinidad under the theme Digital Leadership in the Caribbean.
We'd love to see some regional projects. Digital identities, for example, is something we spoke about. The ability to have interoperability so that as you move from country to country within this single ICT space, that we are able to have that synergy.
In this partnership between the Caribbean Telecommunications Unit and the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, Mr. Taylor says it is hoped that concrete deliverables are decided upon. IEB Executive Director of the Caribbean member states likens the digital transformation to the energy transition.
Clean energy initiatives, for example, the transition to renewables is where the world is heading. And while this shift is daunting for many of us who have either industries and systems rooted in fossil fuels, we also recognize that the transition is inevitable and there is a lot that we can do to propel us forward at a faster rate.
The former Public Utilities Minister calls it an important and challenging time for the region.
Our region has before it tremendous challenges: food security, climate change, rising poverty levels, just to name a few. Going forward, improving the efficiency of government and allowing us to better reach the citizens who really need our help, a challenge that was very evident during the recently concluded pandemic, are just two critical pillars that we must overcome. The advancement in technology has now made this problem within our reach to solve. Let's confront the challenges ahead.
Putting it all into perspective, feature speaker, TNT's Digital Transformation Minister Hassel Bacchus reflects on the widespread disruption of internet services of December 2022, when service abruptly went down for almost 24 hours.
Loss of connectivity was caused by the simultaneous occurrence of three events. Submarine fiber optic cable got damaged somewhere between Antigua, Barbuda, and Guadeloupe. Another submarine cable between Curaçao and Trinidad and Tobago was damaged. And finally, there was a power outage island-wide in Curaçao. What did that do? Well, effectively, what it did, it created a significant broadband and internet resource restriction.
The three events together created what he describes as a perfect storm. Then there was the Budget Day 6-hour disruption of October 4th, 2021.
There was the usual Picong in Trinidad thing, where they were saying that the Minister of Digital Transformation had deliberately turned off the internet to the country so that everyone could focus on the Minister of Finance delivering the budget. Again, I state, I did no such thing.
These events, the minister says, illustrate the importance for regional infrastructure to be resilient, reliable, and secure.
Given the interconnectedness of today's digital environment, this is an issue that transcends national boundaries. And the example really gives you a feel for that. From a Caribbean perspective, it is a regional imperative that our mainly small island developing states always remain connected, not just to each other, but to everywhere else. This requires a coordinated response from all of us as it resonates given the commitment of our region to establish a CARICOM single ICT space.
Key issues will be thrashed out.
We'll examine the importance of data sovereignty, the need for in-region hosting of data to mitigate risk and promote resilience in the delivery of CARICOM-wide services. We do all that, of course, as we evaluate the business case for the establishment of data repositories in some member states. We have a lot of that we're going to discuss because there's a lot of activity happening in that space.
It's time, Minister Bacchus says, for a borderless Caribbean identity, and this discussion is the first step along the way.
Of the two main schools of thought that they have, 6 gig band should be split and part allocated for mobile, the rest for Wi-Fi. And then, of course, the other view is that given the explosion of Wi-Fi, they should put all of it there. Where do we stand? What do we do? What should we do? That is a conversation we need to have. The direction that CARICOM member states take, for example, on this 6 gigahertz spectrum issue, is a significant business decision with much wider implications for the region.
Urvashi Tiwari, Rupurine, TV6 News.
Hubbard's is once again innovating the way you shop with its new online store, providing 24-hour shopping convenience. You can shop now for appliances, hardware, houseware, building material, and more. Free delivery island-wide. Start Shopping now at HubbardsHardware.gd. Safe, convenient, reliable.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.